Welcome back to the Point of Order podcast, an inside look at California politics in the state legislature. I'm your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and glad to be joined once again by Assemblyman Joe Patterson from District 5. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me once again.
I mean, you're just becoming a regular now.
Yeah, fourth or fifth time. It's you plug me in whenever you don't have somebody coming on the show.
I actually called you intentionally this time, though.
Oh, that's good.
I was like, no, we need to have Joe on to kick off the new year.
No.
And
perfect.
Really set the show off right for 2025, you know?
That's right.
So, but you also make a good filler guest, you know?
I'm always happy to fill in, so.
No, we love having you on. I wanted to kind of kick things off because you and I were talking about this, but you got to attend the inauguration. I did not. I was actually, I'll share my story first. I was at a volleyball tournament in San Jose with my daughter at the same time that FurCon was at San Jose, which is the largest furry convention in like the Western United States or something like that. So that was
Weird.
A ton of fun. And it was quite the experience, I will say. But you were at the inauguration. Tell me, like, what was it like? I know there were some issues with the weather and things got moved around. So what ended up happening for you?
Well, we had gotten tickets to be able to go in, but obviously with the changes into the Capitol, I mean, that was very limited, so couldn't get in to the actual inauguration that day. So throughout D.C., there were watch parties set up and stuff like that, and so we went to one of those. And but the best story is the inauguration was great. I mean, hundreds of thousands of Trump people all over the place. But two things I want to point out. The first one is that it was legitimately cold, and in a way I've never.
Yeah.
I mean, and so my wife and I, we went to go see the Lincoln Memorial one day, and we were. It was about a 2-mile walk from our hotel. So we walk down, we get there. Right as we're leaving, we call our Uber, and they start closing down streets. So over time, they closed down every street. It was insane. So over time, we're moving further and further and further away from our hotel. So we said, and we had other events to go to. So we said, we're just going to get out and walk. So we get out and walk, and we end up walking by the arena where he was doing his rally, but he hadn't been there yet.
Okay.
Military, all the National Guard, all these guys there, right? And so we got locked into a 1 block by 1 block radius for 2 hours, unable to leave in a snowstorm. Fortunately, there were some restaurants we were able to go in, and
that's good.
we had to buy stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we literally got locked in, and the next event we had to go to was across the street, but we were wearing tennis shoes and jeans, so we ended up missing the event and had to get back to the hotel once they let us free. But
that's wild.
The amount of security.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to D.C., I've been to the White House, been in the same room with the president. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. It was insane. But you got to think about, there were 2 assassination attempts on his life, right? So
they weren't just blocking traffic, like they were blocking people.
They blocked down basically like the government district of D.C. for 3 days. I mean, you couldn't. So every time you called the Ubers couldn't get in there. You didn't exactly know where it was. So we ended up doing a lot of walking, which was fine, except when it's 8 degrees outside. It's not as fine.
Gosh.
We took the metro, the train a lot and things like that, but it was freezing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on just the inauguration speech, or I don't know if you had any, because I know there was, this is a little bit of honestly old news now, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on this.
Well, Trump single-handedly made street vendors in Washington, D.C. filthy rich. I mean, every corner had guys selling hats and swag, and so I came home with so much stuff I didn't need. So that was kind of cool. But, in terms of his speech, I mean, I don't know if anybody really cares about my opinion, but it was a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I'll tell you that.
In what way? Like,
most of the time they're kind of flowery speeches and a lot of words that don't say anything. But he's like, and this is going to end, and
he
just
was
very direct.
Direct. Absolutely. That's a good way to put
it.
But
his speeches throughout the day, though, kind of kept getting better and better. He did all these press availabilities and things like that, and I just kept thinking he said more and more, and they kept getting better.
I mean, like there was, I watched it and there was a bunch of stuff in there that I was like, wow, like that's awesome, right? Like the reinstating all the military that got kicked out during COVID with back pay, that was wild. And just like, I don't know, there was some really interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
Obviously the immigration stuff, and then he got Mars into that speech, right? That we're going to go to Mars. Which
Elon was very happy about that.
I bet he was.
I mean, I think he said a lot of stuff. First of all, the left is surprised that he's doing what he actually said he was going to do the entire
fulfilling
time.
Promises, right?
He said, look, you may or may not like his immigration policies. He said through the entire process that this is exactly what he was going to do. What does he need to do it on day 180? Why not do it on day 1?
No, absolutely. So, on that note, I think one of the themes of the speech that really stuck out to me is how he's hitting the ground running, to say the least, right? What was it, like the most executive orders in the first day of a presidency and a number of other things. This is obviously not a federal talk show. You can get takes on that speech pretty much anywhere. But I did want to kick things off with our clip of the week this week, because he also started in his first month with a visit to California. So I'm going to play you him meeting Governor Newsom on the tarmac and get your reaction.
Thank you for being here. It means a great deal to all of us, not just the folks in Palisades, the folks in Altadena that were devastated. We're going to need your support. We're going to need your help. You were there for us during COVID. I don't forget that. And I have all the expectations that we'll be able to work together to get this speedy recovery.
We will. We're going to get it done. Tremendous numbers of lives have been affected. A lot of real estate's been affected. Nobody's ever probably seen anything like this. You can almost say since the Second World War, when you think of it. I mean, nothing like this has happened. And we're going to get it fixed, so we'll get it permanently fixed, so it can't happen again. And again, we'll be talking a little bit later, and we'll get it worked out, okay?
I appreciate it, Mr. President.
Thank you, God.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I don't know if you watched any of that coverage, or there was obviously the roundtable after that with a number of, Congress people and Mayor Bass and President Trump and no Governor Newsom for that part, actually. But he ended up taking a bunch of questions from reporters too and stuff. But yeah, just what were your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing he said at the end was, we're going to make sure this never happens again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's laying out policies that are part of the reason why these wildfires are happening in the first place. But another thing I want to say is that, my district and surrounding districts have had massive fires. Now, haven't lost that number of structures, but huge fires, hundreds of thousands of acres. It almost seems every year. And every time, even under the Trump administration, and actually Governor Newsom kind of alluded to it, President Trump came through. I mean, he came through with the assistance, with the funding, all those sorts of things. But interestingly enough, after the Caldor fire, which burned right outside my district and burned down entire communities like Grizzly Flats, Joe Biden actually abandoned California. Joe Biden did not give individual assistance to the people who lost everything, which is very routine. So all this nonsense that Trump isn't going to come through for California is complete and utter political garbage, because he has every time we've had a disaster, and Newsom even alluded to it himself. So everything else is just political posturing nonsense.
Well, and him and Newsom this was kind of reminiscent. They did this already with one of the previous fires, right? So, I know that was something that I think the governor really appreciated when he, despite being political rivals, right, to come together in a time of disaster. I think that's the right thing to do.
I'm not sure they're really rivals. I mean, Newsom wants to be his rival, but
that's a fair point.
President Trump has a much bigger megaphone, and truthfully, Newsom needs President Trump. It's not really a rivalry. So, I mean, he's a little, thorn in his butt, and that's just about it.
Speaking of that, being a thorn, like, this is what has kind of perplexed me about the whole situation is you have this disaster where you really need the federal government to come in and help. And yet we are still pushing forward with this special session. So we'll move into stories of the week here. We're still pushing forward with this special session to antagonize the incoming administration. The Senate last week passed this $50 million package to do two things. Number one, to fund the hiring of more lawyers so we can sue the incoming administration more. And number two,
we definitely need more lawyers in California. That's a problem I hear in my district every day.
That's right. Yeah, I hear that one a lot too.
Yeah.
We should actually put a poll out on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
See how it does. And then the other $25 million, I think half of it goes to that. The other half of it goes to a new fund, a legal aid fund for illegal immigrants that are looking to, I guess, push back against the Trump administration or any enforcement. And so that is the priority of this legislature and the governor at the moment. I think it's a very misplaced priority. I also don't think it's a good strategy to be antagonizing an administration that now you desperately need to really come in and help you. And so do you think they keep pushing this forward?
Yes, they're married to it. I mean, Governor Newsom has had two types of tweets. One set is, you need to do this, President Trump. You need to help out. Don't tie conditions. Don't do all these things. And the other one is, his official communications. Please, President Trump, please come bail us out. I mean, we're the fifth largest economy. I mean, he says it all the time. The fifth largest economy in the world. Like, we're flourishing in California. So the fact that he's begging President Trump is, strange to say the least. But the federal government does have a responsibility to do it. That's one of the main purposes of government is to help people in situations like this. But I think, when I was coming to the Capitol today, just everybody I talked to, because I'm on the committee that's going to look over this legislation.
That's today, right?
It's today. And they'd say, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing today? And say like, oh, I'm just showing up to Trump-proof California. I mean, everybody laughs. It is a joke. If you even know it's happening, it is literally a joke. But it is it's not a joke in the sense of it's a waste of time and resources. But to the average person, they don't care about this. This is all just the legislature doing what Gavin Newsom tells them to do.
I think that's the hard part to me is that's our focus when we should be fireproofing California. We should be talking about, and I know that they extended this special session to include what was this last week? After a lot of pressure from Republicans, by the way, they extended the special session to also include potentially, legislation on fire. Last week we passed a $2.5 million relief package that the governor signed. I think you and I both supported that. We believe strongly in the relief, but we also tried to tie an additional $1 billion of prevention funding, something that we have, the governor's actually cut over the last 4 years by $750 million. And then overestimated, there was that report that came out that said he said that we did prevention. He exaggerated it by almost 700% of what we've actually done. I just don't understand, why can that not be our priority as opposed to these political games?
Well, I'm hopeful that our colleagues can stand up to the extremist environmental community that doesn't want to see some of these changes that need to occur. These fires are detrimental to, the health, well-being, safety of people. But they refuse to pass legislation to actually do prevention. Forget the funding. Forget the money. We can't pass a bill in this legislature
on the
to
regulatory
allow
side.
modest environmental protections, really, at the end of the day.
Well, and you say that these fires are hurting people and they're hurting property. They're also hurting the climate. I mean, it's one of the biggest detriments to the climate are these giant forest fires. And yet we're still refusing to pass policies that make it easier, reduce regulations to actually do these projects where we clear the fuel from our forests. And usually the people that oppose those projects are the radical environmental groups that say, well, we can't do that because we got to protect these plants or these species. It's look, if there is a devastating wildfire, none of that is going to matter, right?
I would actually say we pass policies that make it even worse. The ability to protect people. And just an example that I talked about on the floor the other day, but I mean, our housing policies in California, and both you and I have been supportive of, we need more housing in California. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But, you know, my own city right now that I live in is wrestling with this situation where there's this oak forested area that's currently zoned low density residential, and they kind of want to keep it open space. That's what the community wants. I mean, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of oak trees. But the reality is it's right up against the foothills. And so the state has these policies of building these homes in communities where really nobody lives, where they are definitely high fire risk areas where really we should be intensifying density downtown, but they're so laser focused on like everybody needs to do their part, and that they're kind of missing, you know, the goal here, which is, you know, we want to make sure fires aren't happening, you know, but we need to like relook at all of these things.
Yep. We could do a whole podcast on RENA. I mean, it's just the way that our state requires housing in every community. You know, it's a very one-size-fits-all approach that I don't think is very workable, and a lot of my cities are also struggling to meet those goals, right?
Even if they want to. Even if your cities want to meet the goals, the private market doesn't necessarily bring it. But yeah, you're right.
Well,
we can do a whole other.
Both of our districts are building like crazy, by the way.
We might be some of the only districts doing building.
you know, so it's not even a matter of wanting to or not. I was glad to hear that after pressure from us and a number of other folks, we basically said, look, fine, include the fires in the special session. That's a good thing. We wanted our own separate special session. But if we're going to include them in the same special session, fine, but they should not be linked together. We cannot be linking wildfire relief and recovery and prevention policies with Trump-proofing our state. It's just that is just a recipe for disaster, and it is not a bipartisan spirit of cooperation, right? And so after there was initial announcement in one of the press conferences that, oh, no, we're going to link them together. We're just going to put them all in the same bill. And then they came out a few days later and said, no. I think the governor might have actually had a role in shutting that down, because it was not. I think he knows that's also terrible strategy in addition to, you know, bad politics. So
I mean, the governor did come out and say, after it was announced by legislative leaders that they were going to tie them together, the governor did come out and say that that was a bad idea. So
he did.
You know, props on that. But I mean, again, all this talk about Trump conditioning wildfire relief money, and then yet the Dems were going to tie wildfire relief money to illegal immigration. I mean, seriously, it's crazy.
No, that was wild. I know the president's been getting, different opinions shared on his condition that LA adopt voter identification. I personally don't think that's the appropriate time to have this conversation. But I was curious if you saw that and if you had any thoughts on his conditions for Los Angeles.
Well, I do think a gym membership in California counts as voter identification, which, by the way, my gym, when I signed up, asked for zero ID that I was actually the person who signed up for. In fact, I'll say it publicly right now, I lied about my son's age so so he could work out with me, just by 6 months. But, nobody verified that, right? And that qualifies as a voter ID in California once he hits 18. That's what's crazy,
wild,
So I think, Trump's right in the sense of we have to look at that. But I mean, I don't think that'll end up, I don't think it'll be tied at the end of the day.
I don't think
he throws a lot of stuff out there. I don't think that one's going to stick. So
it seemed like one of those things his staff's like, hey, we should really squeeze something in here, like on voter ID or something. It's like, all right, this seems like not really the right timing. But I also think there's a lot of California congressional representatives that wouldn't let that happen, because they do want to see the actual fire relief come to their state.
We should. I think Tom McClintock he's a congressman. McClintock has a good approach on this, which is we should send as much relief as we can directly to the people who've been impacted by this. Don't let it go through some government and agencies where they take a good chunk of it to, hire more, people to count the money. Like, just give it to people who need the help, and let's do it efficiently. The state government, I feel like
they could do that. They did that during COVID, so they could.
Yeah, exactly.
That, right? So. Interesting. Yeah. By the way, I love going to the gym with my son too. It's a good time. So.
Yeah, but you have to be 12. My son's 11
You
and
have
a
to be
half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So at least in my gym.
Yeah, that's good. I think that probably makes sense. Like 12 is actually pretty low. That's good.
Yeah, but my son's like taller than me. So, good thing there's not a height minimum.
They're like, Joe, you don't meet the height requirements for this ride. While I don't agree with that condition in particular, I do think that California needs to be held accountable. So if we get money for prevention, let's say from the federal government, I think the feds do have a right to say, hey, if we're going to give you these dollars, right, this funding for preventing future tragedies, then you need to show us that you're taking the necessary steps to reduce the regulations to actually make this money go as far as possible. Right. And I think that's actually a fair, once we get, beyond the relief stage, because right now everyone's focused on relief and recovery. That is really important. But at a certain point, we need to move on to that prevention conversation. And I think that is where the conditions actually make sense, where it's like, hey, we're more than happy. And by the way, the feds have a lot of forest area that they need to take responsibility for, too. So this isn't just California not doing its job. It's also the federal government. But there needs to be some accountability on how those dollars are spent, right? So, and you know how local governments are doing too. I don't know if you saw the story. I think it was Friday or this morning. I can't remember. But they built a reservoir in the Palisades specifically for the purpose of preventing wildfires in the Palisades. And when the fire hit, it sat empty because, it's hard to, and this is just on top of like the water pressure issues and the fake emergency alerts the leading emergency alerts. On every level, the locals have failed on this. The state has failed leading up to it. I mean, it really is the definition of failure. And when I read the story about this reservoir and it got built in the 70s, and all these people are saying, I feel safe living here now because I know that the reservoir is there and we're not going to have to worry about fires. It's really hard to imagine a worse situation.
Well, and, I said this in committee when we were going over these bills, actually, is, we have to make sure that we're cutting local red tape. Because one of the things in the budget measure of the $2.5 billion was, I think, $4.5 million, but some odd millions of dollars to pay for permitting on the local level so people can rebuild or whatever. Well, hey, local government, how about you waive that fee altogether so nobody has to pay for it? I mean, the fact is you already have those employees there issuing the permits. Yep. So, just issue the permits. Why are you charging state tax dollars to get a permit to rebuild a person's home? Just stop already.
Yeah, it's incredible. So shifting gears here, I don't know if you saw this Sac State story about, it was, I guess, a week ago now, a little less, all of the false reports on immigration sweeps happening in California. So there's just basically they were breaking down in all these different communities, including Kern County and different parts of the state, where there was all this stuff going around social media about these enforcement immigration raids that were going to be taking place. Turns out all of it was, dare I say, misinformation or whatever you want to call it. And I actually had a school district in my district send out an email in response to this that basically was like, validating all of these kind of rumors and stories that were all false, right? That, federal officials were going to come into schools and things like that. And it was just, I bring this up because I just think it's really not productive when we're having, I think the way the story is being repeated, when you go back and you actually listen to the president's inauguration speech, he makes it very clear that we're talking about criminal illegal aliens. That is the priority of his, of his administration. And the New York Times did a poll last week, over 80% of Americans support that. And so, he's saying one thing, the people of, Americans are getting polled and saying, you find very few issues over 80% of people agree on anything, right? That if you've committed a crime in this country, you should be deported. And then we have all this misinformation going around and people reacting to it like, they're going after everyday people. I mean, it's I don't know if you have any thoughts on it or if you saw that, but it's been really frustrating to watch just how this is playing out in the media and all the crazy stuff that's floating around about it.
Yeah. I mean, I listen to podcasts on New York Times about, somebody concerned about being deported. And I think, those concerns are important and everything, but this is only propelled by, and it's not misinformation, it's just liberal lies that we've been subjected to for, like 10 years now about all this stuff Trump was going to do or, Russian collusion. I mean, it's just part of the MO of what's going on. I mean, the truth is until something happens or implements policy, remember that they were going to do immigration raids in Chicago? That was the thing on day number one.
Sure.
And then they changed plans. Well, maybe that was never going to happen. You know what I mean? So it's just...
And the SACB or whoever wrote this article reached out to federal, immigration, and they're like, oh, we have nothing planned in that area. We have nothing going on there.
Which really hurt their narrative, by the way, because the SACB really wanted to write an article about how it was going to happen. So really messed up their narrative.
Well, that's why I brought the story up, because I the fact that story was in the SACB really, I think, said a lot to me. That, and I actually appreciated them for reporting on this, false narrative that was happening, because that's not typically what we see necessarily, but from them. But I just think just a lot of kind of fear mongering going on with that right now, and to the point where some of our colleagues, and I'll bring it up, we kind of talked about 10 of our colleagues, and I will say 10, there's 120 legislators in California, 10 of them joined together on the west steps of the Capitol last week and did a healing circle in support of, the immigrant community, and in reaction to the new administration. And I don't know, I just had to bring that one up to get your thoughts, just because I'm like, number one, they could only get 10 people. That says, I think, something to me, because usually these press conferences or whatever it is, you get a lot of, if the supermajority's doing it, you usually can get a lot of interest, right? I mean, they outnumber us in the assembly 60-20, just to put that in perspective. So, but yeah, I thought that was, I didn't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I need a healing circle from just having to listen to all this nonsense all day long. I mean, it's, I think that, my stepfather's a Mexican immigrant. All my brothers are Latinos. Like, I don't know if it's ever even come up as a issue of concern, and not to say that I understand the concerns of some people, but I think the bottom line is that if you're here and you're here legally, of any descent, you don't have anything to worry about. And I highly doubt that he's going to start with, like the DACA recipients, or I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I think he's going to go after, like he said in his own speech, if you're a criminal in anywhere in the nation, you've committed crimes, you should be concerned. Yeah. And actually, you should be in prison, but you should be concerned. You shouldn't be allowed to stay here.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, he could probably spend his entire administration on that group alone after the last 4 years, right?
Yeah, and I think that should be the focus. The people who are committing crimes in California, because of SB 54, and the Border Patrol told me this directly, like they cannot, the state does not cooperate with them, even if they're a criminal. They literally walk out of prison and the state will not cooperate with federal officials on the criminals outside of certain crimes.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely ridiculous. I think, I guess shifting gears now to another interesting story. I mean, these all kind of have a theme, I think, because of the inauguration. Everyone's talking about this, but it is California specific. California has abandoned their diesel truck ban, basically these clean energy mandates that they were going to put onto large trucks. Right when the new president is sworn in, I think mostly because the new administration has basically said, like, you're never getting approval for that. The Biden administration had not gotten around to approving the California's plan.
Probably intentionally, because it's dumb.
Well, it's not only dumb, and it is dumb. I mean, clearly that is true, and I'm happy to let you talk about why it's dumb. It's also, like, not possible, right, in a lot of ways, and would have had a tremendous impact on, our ability to move goods in California, to participate in commerce. It was going to have devastating effects, not just on the ability to get your Amazon order, but on prices, right? Like the actual ability, the cost of goods that would happen as a result of this policy would have been devastating for a lot of Californians when we're already paying the highest prices in the country in a lot of areas. So yeah, but anyway, what were your thoughts on this one?
I mean, everybody knows semi trucks going up the Sierra Nevadas, coming across from Nevada is probably not a really good idea. You know what we really should not be focusing on is putting a lot of, semi trucks on California's unstable electrical grid, forever. I mean, the whole idea was dumb, and I'm not going to applaud, that decision being made because it never should have been a thing in the first place.
Yeah, it was. The Biden administration did, before they left, approve the California Air Resources Board mandate for phasing out gas-powered cars by 2035. So it'll be interesting to see if that one sticks around. My guess is, because I don't think that's feasible either, I think that the next governor will rescind that order, most likely, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. I think we're going to, once we get closer to 2035, we're going to realize, like, no, this is just not feasible.
And the technology is still very new, by the way. I mean, in the end of the day, I mean, my son has an e-bike. I mean, different, less complex technology, but the battery went dead, and then we got a new battery, and it's still not working. I have no idea what it is. I'm sure we can get it fixed, but when the average car in California is worth $5,000, and now you're asking people to go out and buy minimum, $25,000 car. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and that's the big thing, right? Is like a lot of it is the cost right now. And I think at this point, I know one of the comments made in, I think the inauguration or something was around, kind of eliminating the mandates, right? Now that doesn't eliminate electric vehicles. This is the thing that I think always gets misconstrued, right? It's like, I drive an electric vehicle and I actually love it. And I'd be happy to sit down with you and tell you why I think it would actually save you money. Because it saved me a ton of money. That being said, we're not getting rid of electric vehicles. We're getting rid of government-mandated electric vehicles. And I think there's a huge distinction between those two things. The technology, while it is new, it is plenty matured to survive on its own. And if you can't convince a consumer to purchase your vehicle at this point in time, when the range is better than ever, when the charging, kind of capabilities have improved drastically, then you have a problem with the product that you're selling, right? Like, it's not...
One way I would push back a little bit is outside of the cost, right? Because, well, first of all, everything you said is true for a lot of people. I mean, I'm not disputing any of that. But every single person I know that's got an electric vehicle, which, by the way, is out of the reach of half Californians can't afford one.
Oh, the upfront cost, 100%, yes.
But just having to redo your electrical, unless you want your car to be charging for, 12 hours or something. I mean, just the cost to redo that is cost prohibitive by itself. I know you can just plug it into a normal socket, but, hopefully it's only at night that you're going to be doing those, right? But that's at home, right? I mean, a lot of people can charge at these other places
I would actually tell people, if they were looking at an EV, just avoid public charging, because it is a ripoff. I mean, it's a total ripoff. You're paying now through Electrify America for a fast charge, 56 cents a kilowatt. Okay, you can charge your car for I don't remember. I had to do it recently, and it was 30 or 40 bucks. I mean, that's slightly less than gasoline, but that is not a value in my mind, right?
Wow.
I think if you charge at home, though, I would say that it's depending on how your house is already set up, and I have a really, not a brand new house, okay, and it was actually pretty affordable to set up. You can charge for 12 cents a kilowatt or something like that. It's very affordable. But no, I hear you. I actually am the opposite, where I'm like, hey, avoid those public chargers at all costs, and every dime you invest in your home charger is worth it. Because you're getting ripped off at those things.
That's crazy. 54 cents a kilowatt hour.
It's insane.
That's nuts. And look, it takes a lot of infrastructure to set those things up. So I'm not mad at the companies for doing that.
Right.
The utility price alone is 44 cents cents a kilowatt hour, right? So they got to add on another 10 so they can actually pay for the infrastructure.
But you have to think about people, because you and I both, I assume, live in a home, right? A single family dwelling. People that live in apartments, you're not pulling into your garage every night and plug in, in your 12 cents a kilowatt charger.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're relying on, public charging infrastructure of some kind. Now, there's some slower chargers, like through ChargePoint, that are a little less than that aren't the fast chargers. But the reality is that for a lot of people, electric vehicle kind of just powering them is not really feasible, right?
I don't think in 10 years we're going to be there.
home.
I mean, that's the bottom line. In 10 years, are we
Yeah.
going to be there, right? I mean, I think both of us
Absolutely
agree,
not.
like
100% no.
no chance.
And even if the technology improves, which I do expect that it will, I think that you're still taking choices away from consumers. And like the idea that government should be involved in mandating what type of technology you buy, I think is just patently ridiculous, right?
Especially when it's more expensive.
Let's move through these last couple ones because I want to get to a couple 2025 predictions
right.
with you if you have any thoughts. This one, our colleague, Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez, introduced a bill, the Protect, I'm going to get the now it's asking me to sign in. Protect Girls Sports Act that would essentially limit high school sports in California to biological women and biological men in their separate categories. Quick thoughts on that. I don't want to. I'm going to move through these last ones kind of quickly because we're a little behind.
Sure. Well, I've asked Assemblywoman Sanchez to add me as a co-author, so that's my thought on that. But I did have a constituent in my district, high schooler, who got second place in a cross-country skiing state championship, lost somebody who was assigned male at birth, but is competing as a female. And, I think it's a conversation that needs to happen. I think, when you have that conversation on, treat everybody with dignity and respect, I think that's really important in this conversation.
Yeah,
but also, you have to consider, I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, you got to consider, it's worth the conversation to have.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. And I think it's you have to have the conversation about fairness while maintaining, dignity and respect for every individual involved in the conversation. My daughter, I think I mentioned earlier, is playing volleyball now, and that has been a big topic of conversation, just that sport in particular in this issue. And that is not that is a conversation that as a dad, like you definitely want to make sure that things are fair and things are safe. Right,
yeah, totally.
For your daughter. So, moving on, doing like quick takes here. There was a story in Cal Matters on AI. Basically, labor's gearing up to fight against AI in a greater way. I won't really read too much of it, but essentially, it's kind of the basic tenets of the argument are that AI potentially having the ability to either change or displace certain jobs. And so, I think we're going to see some of that in the legislature this year too, kind of play out as well. And we'll see how that conversation goes. You're going to be dealing with this in the privacy committee.
Oh, yeah.
I was removed from the privacy committee, so
demoted.
I wasn't removed, actually.
Well, hey,
I just never was put back on.
That's what happens when you have Republicans pick up seats in the legislature. I actually had to give up a good committee too.
That's a fair point. That was the one where I was like, that's a bummer. Because I really do enjoy the issues of privacy. Yeah. You got removed as the chair. You got demoted, right?
Well, I did, but I got a different vice chairmanship.
Right, because
so,
you're now on
sort of
health,
worked
right?
out.
So,
health, and
so,
utilities, actually. But.
So I just, I think that'll be, I didn't know if you have any thoughts on the AI issue specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good discussion to have. I think, when we raise, I just went to a brand new McDonald's grand opening, actually. It's family business out in my district.
So he texted me to go,
Friday.
and I wasn't able to. And he sent me the
photo
of you and him. And
that's right, because you knew him.
He was basically shaming me for not going to this grand opening.
Well, it was a good one, and I think, that place is almost, the expectation is when you walk in, you're going to use the kiosk to order.
Right.
And, I mean, that's because of the cost. So I think as we of employment now, of hiring people
Yeah.
now. And I think as we have these conversations on technology replacing people, you got to think about, we have to keep the cost of how much it costs to just do business in California down, so we can keep hiring people
100%.
and not machines. Because you obviously get better. It took me like way longer than it needed to order, my hamburger.
And this is what we've been warning about, these, I would say unreasonable minimum wage increases over the years, right? Is, reasonable minimum wage increases, okay, let's have that conversation. But when you do it at the speed that California has been doing it, then you're going to have some issue. Companies are going to start looking at other options.
Yeah.
I was just at a market in San Jose. It's called like the Sofa Market, and it's just like a little circle of restaurants, and it's amazing. There's tables, but it's all kiosk. I mean, it's just the entire thing.
Yeah.
And the workers are cooking and doing the kind of kitchen work.
Yeah.
But you have no actual interaction. It's really interesting.
I was in D.C. or something, and the at the airport, one of the little kiosk places, which they had the technology. They must have been licensing it, technology from a big place, technology company, where you just walked in the store and you grab whatever you want and you
That's like
swipe
the Amazon
your.
Fresh
It
model,
is
right?
that. Yeah, it's the same thing, but you don't have to put it in a cart. You just grab whatever you want and then you swipe your credit card, walk out, and it charges you.
It's pretty wild. I have not done that yet.
It's crazy.
We have a new Amazon Fresh in my district. So
Oh yeah, we have one in mine. Mine was the first one in Northern California. Thank you very much.
Congratulations,
So.
Steve. Yeah, I still haven't been over there. I'm gonna need to go.
Well, I was at the ribbon cutting. You missed that, huh? Maybe next time.
You're really pointing out all the ribbon cuttings that I missed. Yes, the two things that you were at that I missed. Those were those. Those were them. I loved this article in Cal Matters. We don't really have to dive too much into it, but it was just kind of basically been talking about how Newsom is like, as the new administration is talking about the Department of Government Efficiency, right, and creating more efficiencies and cutting costs and making government work better for the people. Newsom's been going around saying, "Hey, California, that's what we do," and that's like Governor Newsom wrote that book on Citizenville. I think that's what it was called, on how we can make government work better for people or whatever. I haven't read it, so I'm just kind of summarizing it there. But this article basically says, like, not only as he sells efficiency, it looks at how big California's government has grown since he has been governor.
Thank you.
So in the last 6 years, we've seen government just expand dramatically, right? Which generally means less efficiency, right?
Yeah.
When you're growing government. So even Newsom's own office, like just his office, has doubled in size. At the end of 24, the governor employed 381 people, according to payroll data, compared to 150 in 2018 when he took office. That's just his office has over doubled in size. Yeah. And there's a number of other examples in here that we don't have time for, but I thought that was interesting. So
I mean, if you can name a single substantive thing that has gotten more efficient in California under his leadership, I'd love to know. Just a single one. Like, that's a substantive one. I'm not talking about like, we built this road really quick. No, what's an actual policy change that has made California substantively more efficient? Zero.
Well, we were talking with Tom Sheehy earlier this month we had a budget episode, and even his current budget proposes elevating two new departments to agency status, which is a growth in government, right? Now, you can have the argument whether or not that's the right conversation and how that's going to work, but I mean, the reality is that, generally speaking, the governor's approach has been government is the solution, right? And I just I tend to think that that is not always the case. Last story: TikTok ban. Quick thoughts. Well, no, it was banned and then it was unbanned.
Yeah.
And then everyone cried and then
it was disbanded.
Everyone came back. I don't know. I don't use TikTok. I'm like the worst person to comment on this story because I have zero interest in it. I will say that just in terms of our youth, I mean, putting aside the national security concerns of TikTok, which I think are legitimate, I don't let my kids have social media, so it's like I'm fine with TikTok not existing, but at the end of the day, obviously, there's a lot of people that use it and enjoy it.
I'm tired of people sending me TikTok clips because I cannot open them because I do not have the app. You know, it's a fair debate on this. I mean, TikTok's a great app for a lot of people. I've seen people use it. I like that it actually uses AI to curate what you want to watch. You know, obviously, I think there's general concerns about like just being glued to a screen all the time, which, by the way, other companies are getting really good at, like YouTube and all that kind of stuff.
100%.
But, you know, should we ban it? I mean, I don't know. But I don't really, personally, I haven't downloaded it because I don't want the Chinese government spying on me if that is indeed the case. But that's the whole concern. Bipartisan legislation. They wanted to ensure that, and they pass it.
I mean, when you see the level of bipartisan support that bill got after they saw the security concerns of TikTok, then I would say they know something I don't, and I would trust that is a problem, right? I loved some of the memes going around about like American tech social media companies like, no, come to us. We steal your data too. Like just come hang out on our apps, you know, and it was pretty fun.
I mean, I think people, to the extent people know how their data is being used, I think that's fine. I mean, if TikTok I don't really know. Are they transparent about how the data is used? You know, all that kind of stuff. I really have no idea. But companies are getting much better. And just as a side note, plug Facebook a little bit for what they've done on Instagram with the child accounts and things like that. I mean,
I actually did appreciate that. And it's like a default now, where like if you're under a certain age, you get a more protected account.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of these companies are trying to address concerns that we have, and I think that's great.
Okay, moving on, before we let you go, to a couple predictions. So I found this thing on The Atlantic that was really funny. This Thomson Reuters has this proprietary AI technology that they use to essentially study all the research going on in the world right now and predict 10 things that are going to happen potentially in 2025. And so I was going to go through some of them, but then I also wanted to see if you had any predictions. The first one here was that teleportation would be tested at some point in 2025. I'm thinking not on this one, but early indicators point to a rapid acceleration of research leading to the testing of quantum teleportation in 2025. So I don't know if that was on your bingo card.
I'm too stupid to understand that, so I'm going to go with no.
Yeah, I'm going to go with no as well, but you know, if I'm wrong...
Yeah, but you know, the way they're going to come out is they're going to say like, oh, this moved from that 1/bazillionth of a tenth of a second, you know, and you'll be like, sweet.
This one, especially because, you know, I've had family members deal with this, you know, I think is a good one. Number 2, scientific studies of dementia patients have already been able to isolate specific chromosomes that cause different forms of the disease. And so in 2025, this AI machine thinks that our understanding of the human genome and genetic mutations could lead to more, you know, treatments for dementia. I think that would be amazing. I actually think that is probably more likely of something that we could move for, you know, make progress on in 2025.
I can see that.
Yeah. Number 3, the solar energy is going to grow in California or not in California, I'm sorry, in the United States because the technology of these solar panels are going to improve. I mean, that's possible.
Sure.
I still think it's going to have its limitations. But
Yeah. I mean, I have solar. I think it's great.
I have a different energy prediction on that, actually, but that's probably true as well. Number 4, basically more treatments to prevent type 1 diabetes. I think that is something that I would, you know, potentially see as
treat
possible.
Or prevent?
Prevent. Type 1 diabetes is preventable.
Look, medical technology is amazing. These companies and these researchers are coming up with. And by the way, AI helps a lot with developing those because it changes the way and the speed in which you can do trials. But it's pretty amazing stuff.
This one's basically talking about advances will make you know, gene editing and repairing of DNA a reality. So
I believe it.
You know, you could actually you know, fix some of those problems before they happen. This one, I don't think, but food shortages and price fluctuations will become a thing of the past, based on the growth in genetically modified crops and other technologies on food. I don't believe that is
No.
going to happen.
No, that would be, I hope, that'd be amazing.
No,
you
it
know,
would,
but
for sure.
That's not happening.
Number 6, electric air transportation will take off. I don't know. Have you met with these companies that are doing this? Like, there's a company called Whisk that is essentially like it's a fully automated electric plane basically, but it's not a plane. It has vertical takeoff like a helicopter, and then it shifts its propellers and then flies.
Yeah.
But that these could. I think 2025 is way too early to be having this conversation.
I mean, it's going to happen
but
and be out there, but I'm not getting on one.
You're not getting on
No.
one? I would ride one. Although they'd probably, maybe not the first one. I don't think I would ride the first one.
No, you can try.
I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Our packaging all becomes biodegradable. I mean, we'll see. I think that's possible. I just don't want paper straws, man. That's like my thing. It's like, make the biodegradable, more plasticky ones, but don't give me a paper straw. It's just
What is kind of crazy is I live relatively close to the dump or recovery facility, whatever they call it now, whatever the PC term is in Placer County.
PC term for the dump.
And I just call it the dump. It is pretty amazing how the size of that hill, and they have amazing technology. It's one of the most advanced dumps in the state, but that size of that hill has got, it's crazy in 2025 that our solution to human waste is to dig a big hole and keep it just growing up, until you can't anymore, I guess. It looks like it's a fair mountain now.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 8, cancer treatments will advance and have very few toxic side effects. So basically moving
anything biotech you have on your list, I agree with. It's happening.
100%. DNA, number 9, DNA mapping at birth becomes the norm. That's kind of freaky
The
to me.
norm?
Yeah, becomes the norm.
I want nothing to do with that. The state kind of does that already, but that's all.
Yeah, that's
we don't have
another
enough time for that.
conversation.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the digital will be everywhere. The digital world will just basically take another leap, and everything's going to be digital. I mean, look, I think we're already going this direction. I don't think that's really that much of a hot take. My predictions for 2025, I think in California politics, I think Karen Bass will the mayor of LA will very possibly, come up against some recall wins and some conversations or efforts to recall her. I think in tech, I think AI and robotics and all this crazy technology will continue to take leaps forward. All while we're going to see a kind of a growing pushback, I think, against screen time and tech and especially when it comes to minors and kids. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And then my prediction on energy was a little different than the AI bot or whatever, and that's that nuclear energy will return. In terms of we're going to start having to talk about nuclear again in the United States, especially as all of these new AI data centers and processing comes online. Nobody's really talking about how big of an energy suck it's going to be, and we're going to have some form of reliable energy beyond what we currently do. And so I think I'm actually going to be co-authoring a bill with Joaquin Arambula on this topic, and we're really going to try to start moving California towards that direction. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Did you have any predictions before we let you go?
Yeah, sure. Well, the one prediction we talked about a lot is a negative Nancy one, which is, and sorry to offend all the Nancys out there, but is I don't believe California will make any substantive changes to wildfire prevention, despite destructive fires, in Los Angeles. Yeah. I think that'll get kind of sucked into the political world out there, So that's unfortunate. I think we're going to see also a lot of changes in healthcare this coming year, really start the conversations on, as you've seen more sort of medical advice options online, which really kind of started with like the compounding pharmacies for like Ozempic and things like that, and people's accessibility to, you know, getting a doctor in like Florida. Now, those were expensive options, but I think, you know, you see Amazon Healthcare, Amazon One, I think is what it's called, or you see all these sort of online medical services for kind of some of the easy situations that you might have, right? I think you're going to see that really kind of expand over the next year or two, because they're becoming very affordable, like $14 for an appointment or something.
That's really
and
interesting.
so I really think you're going to see an expansion of people being able to afford some treatment options, like outside of having to wait, you know, a couple weeks for a doctor's appointment. So, or at least more discussions around that.
Very interesting. Well, we'll have to check back in a year and see what happened.
All right, I'll be here in January 2026.
We'll book you now, right?
Yes.
Joe, as always, great to have you on the podcast. Next episode, we're actually going to be bringing on our colleague, Assembly Member Jeff Gonzalez, introducing him to the people, and excited to have him. He is a new colleague of ours that won in a border district, actually in Imperial County. And so that's going to be a fun conversation. So definitely tune in a couple weeks for that. That episode will release in a couple weeks. As always, you can share ideas for future shows by emailing pointoforderpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on socials at Point of Order Pod, and you can listen on Spotify or Apple, and you can watch on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on X, myself at Joshua_Hoover, and the wonderful Patterdude at Patterdude. For Joe Patterson. He's actually probably the best follow, if I'm being honest, on X. So, all right, Joe, thanks so much, and it's great to have you.
All right, thanks for having me.